One of the most difficult things to do is be able to calculate your company's overhead. What does it cost to run your business? It's even more difficult to break it down into a billable overhead rate per hour. TurboBid's overhead calculator will do just that for you. We have different steps and they're pretty self-explanatory. Here you want to enter in the quantity of the current employees that work in the field that you can bill for their time. So it's not office staff, it's your guys working on the jobs. Simply click into a cell and you can do an employee's name, or you can put in a classification if you wish. And if you have different benefits for different journeymen, you can level 1 or number 1, whatever the case is. You understand what I'm saying though. And then put in the quantities. So that's it for step 1, but go through and enter in all of your employees or classifications and your quantities. All right, now let's go to step 2. So we're going to scroll down. And here we have field employee hours. You see we have 2 different columns. One is payroll and one is billable. And you'll also notice that the name of your employees will automatically be entered in this field based upon what you had entered in step 1. So the payroll column, you want to enter the total hours that each employee will be paid for during the year. So you're starting at your normal 2,080 hours during the course of a year, and then just subtract the unpaid time off. So I'm a generous employee or employer. I'm going to provide my journeyman level 1 with paid vacation, paid holidays, and the only thing I'm not going to pay them for is sick days. So I say, well, maybe you'll take 3 days off during the course of a year. So that'd be 24 hours. So 2,080 divided by 24, that's going to be 2,056. And then billable, enter the total billable hours for each employee. You can use the billable hours from TurboBid's manpower classifications billable rate calculator. So let's take a quick look at our manpower classification. All right, here's our classification form. Now let's click on our link here to go to the calculator. All right, the calculator here is a lot bigger than what my recording screen is here. So let me just move this form over. And what we want to look at is in our wage and burden totals, the annual billable hours that have been calculated for this employee. So I can actually just copy it, and I'm going to get out of this calculator, and I'm going to get rid of the classification. Okay, so then for my journeyman, I want to come into my billable cell and I can hit paste. So payroll, they're going to get paid for 2,056 hours during the course of a year, but out of that, I'm only going to be able to bill out 1,928 hours to my customers. So you want to go through and for each classification or employee, enter in payroll hours and billable hours. While we're at it, I want to add in a manpower classification for a service technician because that makes a lot of difference where maybe you can only bill out for an 8-hour day, 5 hours out of the day. Now let me scroll back up to step 1. Let's come in here and put in a service tech, and we'll have a quantity of 1. All right, let's scroll down to our service tech here. Same thing, we'll figure the 2,056 hours in payroll, and then we need billable, so I'm going to open up the calculator for that classification. All right, here we are. I'm going to click on my labor rate calculator, and in here you can see that we have unbillable service hours, 15 hours per week. So that's a lot, and that's time where he's traveling in between jobs. So let's move this back over, and now you can see that our annual billable hours for our service tech is 988 hours. So let's go back to Step 2, service tech. I'm going to paste that in there, 988. So that's a big difference. Billable hours 1900 versus billable hours of 988. All right, so let's scroll down. Now this is going to show you as well the total total field employee hours. And the hours are based on the employees selected in step 1. So 1 journeyman, 1 service tech. So altogether, for our field employees, we know that we'll be having a payroll. And here we're going to have a payroll of 4,112 hours per year, and we'll be able to bill out 2916 per year. So let's scroll down to step 3, field employee hours. We have annual and we have billable, billable per week. So annual, enter the total hours that each employee will actually work during the year. Start at 2,080 and subtract all time off, regardless if they're paid or not. So once again, I can go back to my calculator to see what that might be. So let me go there. All right, here we are again, labor rate calculator. Now, what I want to take a look at here, so this employee, I've got 80 hours, 48 hours for holidays, sick or personal day, 24 hours, and then company meetings and training and education. Well, they're going to be working for us, but they're actually not going to be in the field, so those don't count. So basically, we're starting at the 2,080 and we're subtracting these hours. Okay? So I can actually bring out my calculator, start at 2,080 minus 80 for vacation, minus 48 for holidays, and minus 24 for sick days. So I'm at 1928. All right, let me close this down. Let's close that. Let's get rid of this. All right, so here I want to put in my 1928. And then we would do the same thing for our service tech, and I'm gonna say the same hours. So 1928. All right. So this is going to do the calculation and tell me what the billable hours per week will be. So for my journeyman, we're going to be looking at 40 hours per week, and then service tech, 20 hours per week. So, and obviously, if you're looking at your journeyman 40 hours a week, obviously if he's on vacation, you're not going to bill out 40 hours for him. Or if he does take a sick day, you're not going to bill out 40. But typically, you're going to bill out 40 hours a week, and the same thing with your service tech, it'd be 20 hours per week. And you need to keep an eye on these hours and compare with what you're actually billing out. Because if you see that you're not billing out for this service tech 20 hours a week, you're going to need to make an adjustment because you're not going to be covering your overhead. All right, let's scroll down now. So that was step 2. Let's go to step 3. Field employee pay rate and burden. So we have pay rate column and burden column. Here we have pay rate. Enter the employee's hourly pay rate that's on their paycheck. So for the journeyman, we'll say 25 bucks an hour, and we'll say the service tech as well, 25 bucks an hour. And then you have your burden. Enter the employee's annual burden. Once again, you can use the burden amount in TurboBid's manpower classifications, billable rate calculator. So let's take a look at that one more time. All right, let's open up our calculator. And let's move our screen over so we can see our burden amount. So this is for, actually, this is our serviceman. So we have a burden here, calculated burden 57,000. Let's copy that, X out of that, get rid of, and let's come into our service tech And we'll paste this in, but we don't need this stuff here. Let's get this out. Okay, so 57,547. Then we would do the same thing with our journeyman. Just to save time, I'm just going to put in, we'll say, $35,000. All right, so that's step 3. All right, let's go to step 4. So we'll scroll down. Now here you're going to enter in your overhead expenses. What does it cost to run your business? And we have different categories. So office staff, and that's going to be your payroll for your office staff. And any of these, even though we have a name entered in, you can come in here and put in your own name as well right on top of it. They're not locked. So that's up to you. But one thing to notice here is that you also want to account for the burden for your office staff. So make sure that that's including that. And I'm just going to scroll through here. So we have vehicle expenses. We have advertising. We have benefits for the office staff and owner. We have physical business location, financial, insurance. It's very detailed, and that's what you need. IT, legal, miscellaneous, office expenses, owner salary. If you're not working with the tools, or if you want to put in, split it between, you would do that as well. So you have office salary, or I'm sorry, that would be owner salary. You have taxes. You can account for tools in here if you wish. You can also account for tools in the estimate, and that's typically what I'll do, just do a small percentage on your tools tab. Training, account for those costs, and then anything unique to the trades. We'll go on down a little bit further. We have utilities, vehicle accessories, and then you're going to get into totals. So overhead totals. Actually, let's go up just a little bit, and I'm just going to put in let's say $2,000 a month for something, just so we have some numbers to work with for overhead. All right, so our first totals will be total field employee annual pay rate and burden. That's going to be monthly and annual. So you have your field employee annual pay rate. It's based upon the employees selected in step 1. So the quantities in step 1. And then you have your burden for your employees, and that's based on step 1 as well. So I can see what my monthly is for pay rate, my monthly for burden, my annual for pay rate, and my annual for burden. And it's going to add those two together. So you have your pay rate and your burden on a monthly and an annual. So you can quickly see what your payroll is going to be. All right, let's scroll down and continue. Then we have our total overhead expenses, and that's going to be your field employee annual pay rate and burden, and that's going to be the amount from the field right above here, your total field employee annual. So you can see we have 16,279, 16,279. So you're just dropping those down. So you have your payroll and then your overhead expense. And the overhead expense is going to be the total of everything that you entered in step 4. And remember, we entered in $2,000 a month, so there's our annual as well. So it's going to add those two together to show you what your total overhead expenses are, including employees and overhead, on a monthly and on an annual. All right, let's scroll down so we can finish up here. Your next step, okay, so you've determined what your annual is. Now you need to determine what's your expense per hour, per billable hour. So total overhead expense, so it's the total of all your overhead expenses entered in step 4. And then your total billable hours. And that's basically step 1. Let's go back up here. So step 1, your quantities for your employees times the billable hours for each of those employees. So that's going to give you your annual billable hours. So let's scroll back down. All right, so here we have our monthly and our annual billable hours company-wide, and that's going to give you your per hour overhead expense. So in TurboBid, you can select to enter in your overhead on a per hour rate. And that's what this is going to give you right here. So do your calculation, take this amount, and enter it into TurboBid in your bid price tab for overhead per hour. Now we can take it a step further. For a lot of people, they want to use a billable rate in their estimate. So where they're selecting manpower, and actually I'll show you this. All right, so here's our TurboBid shot, and there again, I apologize, my recording screen is so much smaller than my TurboBid screens, but what we're doing here we're in direct labor, where we're going to select what manpower is going to be on the job. Here you can see, let me move this over, that we have a foreman with a vehicle, $23 or a $30 pay rate, and $23.27 burden. And that's great. That's being very precise on what the pay rate and the burden is. And the burden amount's coming from your calculator. But some people want to be able to charge a per hour and not do burden. But that per hour, it's going to include overhead. It's going to include profit. So you're telling your customer, our cost for labor, anything you do, it's going to be like 75 bucks an hour, whatever the case is. Here we can go to our drop down and we can say a foreman billable rate per hour includes overhead and profit. Put in our quantity. So here we have 75 bucks an hour. And that's going to include overhead. It's going to include profit. Now, one quick note, if you're doing this, that's fine. And in the past, if somebody would tell me that they use a billable rate per hour, and I would ask them, well, what amount of that is burden? I don't know. What amount of that is your overhead? I don't know. What's your profit? I don't know. It's just what we use in this area. It's what everybody uses. Well, that would drive me nuts. I want to know. But now you can. With the calculator, you know what that billable rate per hour is. Your overhead, your burden, your profit, everything. But what I wanted to show you, if we go to our bid price tab, and this is where you're going to select your overhead and burden. Now, if you're using a billable rate per hour, you want to adjust how you account for overhead and profit. So in overhead, now you're going to go by specific category, and you can put your overhead on everything except for labor, since your labor already includes overhead. Same thing with profit. You can put profit on everything other than labor. All right, so it's perfectly fine to use a billable rate per hour with TurboBid because you know what it is. All right, so let's go back to our calculator. Okay, so our last section here, billable rate per hour with overhead and profit. Hours per week, we have a column, and then we have rate per hour, we have a column. So the hours per week is the number of calculated billable hours per week for each employee. And once again, keep an eye on these hours. If you're not billing out for the journeyman 40 hours, take a look and adjust the calculator. Bring it down to where it's actually reflecting what you're billing out. And same thing with your service tech. We're saying at 20 bucks an hour. If we can bill them out, then these are the numbers we'll use. So this is really cool. We're seeing here for each employee, in this case service tech, our billable rate per hour is 128 bucks per hour. So I can actually tell somebody that's our rate for any work they do. We're going to charge them 128 bucks an hour. So that's the calculator. Oh, if we scroll down a little bit, well, actually I can. It's just a section below that's going to show you your total billable hours for your company. So in this case here, it's showing that we have a total of 60 billable hours per week company-wide.